great to be with the IJS community today on this Purim day, and to kind of ground ourselves in where we might be in our individual practice with regard to the mitzvot, these divine invitations to engage with Judaism, with the divine. And there are 4 specific mitzvot that are a part of this holiday of Purim that we are observing today. So just a quick kind of check-in. For some people, this might be new. For others, you'll be like, yep, Natch, we did that last night. We'll see. But they all start with the Hebrew letter Mem. Mishta, this idea of celebration, of drinking, of frivolity, having a little bit of a party atmosphere as we're doing online today here with our costumes. And the custom of mishloach manot, sending food portions or gifts to friends, leish l're'echu, right? Like from a person to another person, a friend, a neighbor. And so beautiful customs. Some of us may have already indulged in too many hamantashen, our traditional Ashkenazi style cookie with the filling, right? And then there is the mitzvah of Megillah, of hearing the Megillah, the book of Esther, chanted, which is a part of the holiday as well. And then there's the last mitzvah, Matanot le'evyonim, giving gifts to the poor. And what strikes me about this particular moment in Purim, I'm here on the West Coast, so about 9:40 in the morning. There's still a lot of hours left of Purim. So I've engaged already in the first 3 mitzvot of Mishta and Mishloach Manot and Megillah, but I haven't yet engaged at this point in the morning in the mitzvah Matanot le'evyonim, giving gifts to the poor. So it strikes me that even if you're in another time zone, you may have some hours left of Purim. It's a really great time to reflect on this mitzvah and to kind of think about why is it here? What are the challenges in it? And how can we engage in it in the hours that we have left here in Purim today if we haven't already done so? And we'll see through one of our text sources today, there's opportunities to engage in this beyond Purim, right? So I want to acknowledge Anmol and Rachel. Thank you for holding the text space today, and ask them to share the source sheet. If you're not in a place where you can see the source sheet, no worries. I'm going to, as always, read through the sources. So the first place I want to go to in the Megillah, in the book of Esther, is one of the source texts for why Matanot le'evyonim, gifts to the poor, are associated with the holiday. So we read in the book of Esther, chapter 9, verse 22, they, that's us, were to observe the days as days of feasting. So there's our mishta, right? Our celebratory aspect, right? And merrymaking. And as an occasion for sending gifts to one another. Manot ish l're'echu. This is the food portions that I talked about that we send to each other. And then umatanot le'evyonim, and presents to the poor. So one of the things that happens before, on the Shabbat before Purim, is we have observed a Shabbat called Shabbat Zachor, in which we read a special Torah portion from the book of Deuteronomy, recalling Amalek and how Amalek attacked the weak, doesn't say the poor per se, but it definitely is the marginalized and weaker people who were straggling behind in the exit from Egypt, in the wilderness, right? And so one of the specific characteristics of Amalek's evil, as it were, was that he didn't just attack able-bodied people and people who could fight back in the same capacity with him, but he actually attacked people who were marginalized, compromised, weak, and very, very vulnerable. And so one of the reasons we read this Torah portion before Purim is because we learn that Haman, the evil villain in our Megillah Book of Esther story, is descended from Amalek. And so we come into Purim with this sense of awareness about people who prey on the weakness and the vulnerability of others. And so some of our commentaries actually say that this mitzvah is here, matanot le'avunim, giving gifts, or tzedakah, we might think of it, specifically to the poor, is a way of addressing or rectifying the vulnerability that we know that Amalek preyed on in the wilderness. And so when we are to lift up the weak to support them, we're actually helping to do a tikkun, a repair in the world to the evil that happens as a result of people like Amalek and Haman preying on people who are vulnerable. So in this mitzvah, there's a rejection of the Amalekite approach to the world, right? It's a terrible thing. So what can we do? We can lift up this mitzvah to rectify that in the world. So one of the things about matanot le'avunim on Purim is, how do we know that someone's poor? How do we walk down the street and know, how do we determine that? Very subjective, kind of situation, right? What assumptions are we making, or how are we discerning that, right? When we go to give these gifts. So I want to look at the second source from the Babylonian Talmud. This is from the tractate known as Megillah. And it says, with regard to our verse from Esther, where we read umatanot le'avunim, gifts to the poor. And in the Talmud, the rabbis are asking, well, okay, how many and to whom? And tell me more, Rabbi, about how I would actually engage in this mitzvah. The Talmud says, shtei matanot l'shnei bnei adam. That means that you want to give 2 gifts to 2 people. So we know here it is on Purim. And if we want to engage with this mitzvah, we're going to say, I need to find 2 different people to give 2 different gifts to give money to the poor, to give presents to the poor. And as we scroll down, we'll see the next text, which is from the Shulchan Aruch. This is a code of Jewish law. And I'm going to read these texts out loud because it helps guide us even further than the Talmud does about how we discern how to do this mitzvah. One is not exacting with their money on Purim, says the Shulchan Aruch. Rather, one should give to anyone who extends their hands. So here, as in elsewhere in Jewish sources, when it talks about how much investigation or how much discernment do we engage in about whether someone is really poor or not, this text is saying, on Purim, we do not engage in that. Don't worry about it. Don't be a perfectionist. Don't be so skeptical that it blocks you from opening your hand and engaging in this mitzvah. And one of the things I love as we scroll down to the next part of the text from the Shulchan Aruch is it says, and this has happened to me in various times in my life on Purim, it says here in the text, in a place that does not have poor people, or perhaps we might read this as, we do not see poor people or people who are extending their hand, one may delay their Purim money and give it in a place where they want. So thank you, Rachel and Anwell. You can take the text down, right? So we learn a couple of things from that. So number one, do not discriminate. Do not investigate too much. Do not be a perfectionist with regard to this mitzvah. And the other thing is if we can't do this today, it doesn't mean that we have to say, oh, we couldn't engage in this mitzvah today, but we can carry this forward and carry out these 2 gifts to 2 different people on another day, right? If we really look around and we don't see people who are poor or who are extending their hand. So I find this to be one of the most challenging mitzvot associated with this holiday, because it helps us go into a place of empathy and of release, of really letting go of this sense of, what if I give of myself and this person doesn't really need it, right? Or what if, I've thrown my money away, right? All those different human, very human tendencies that we can feel when we try to hold on tight to what we have and feel that there is a sense of possession around that. And what this mitzvah and these texts are asking us to do is they're asking us to release that sense of something being permanent, of being ours, of ownership, and to release it in joy. Make someone's day. Walk up to them and give them a bill, right, of money, just because of the joy of Purim, just because of our gratitude for our redemption in this story. So that's a lot. As we head into our sit, we may want to consider, as we do when we say the Ashrei, Psalm 145, and we say the words Poteach et yadecha, open our hands. We may want to consider today entering the sit with the awareness of our hands being open, feeling the back of our palms on our legs, on a surface, to embody what it means to open our hands, to release our resources, and to do so freely with a sense of joy. So I invite you into that space as we prepare our bodies for this mitzvah later on today. What does it mean to open our hands, to give with some abandon? We'll sit and I'll bring you back together in about 11 minutes or so.
Thank you, Susan. So I hope you can stay around at the top of the hour to have some conversation and reflection. If you need to leave us, we wish you'd say shalom and farewell. And right now we have an opportunity for those who are remembering loved ones. If you'd like to enter the name of anybody in the chat, and then thank you to our tech team for putting the Mourner's Kaddish on the screen. And you're welcome to unmute and join me in reciting the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba be'alma divrach yivrutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'bizman karim amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach le'alam u'la'almei alma. Barach v'yishtabach v'yit'ar v'yit'amam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei b'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata amiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu be'alko Yisrael v'imru amen. Aseh shalom b'mrumav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'alko Yisrael v'alko Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
All right, so thank you, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I didn't have a beard to go with the costume. Sorry. So it's a clean shaven Santa, but you can imagine the beard. Somebody asked, what's my costume? Here I am. Hineni. Okay. So Susan, thank you for leading us in that practice and taking us through the mitzvot of Purim and reminding us. Just people are already at it. Just a reminder, you are welcome to ask questions, invited, encouraged to do so. Please just put a good example, all caps question at the front allows us to see it. Also feel welcome to respond to one another, but practicing mindful speech, no fixing, advising, saving, or correcting, using first person, speak from your own experience. So thank you. Okay, so there's lots of places we could start. It looks like Mir has started us off. Okay, posted the question twice. There we go. So maybe we'll just lead off with that question. What should we do about those people in need who don't reach out for help for whatever reason? It's a great question. So I wonder how you want to, because this is in response to particularly the mitzvah of matanot avyonim, of giving gifts to the poor, or even mishloach manot, sending gifts to each other. But in some sense, there's a question of, well, someone needs to be open to receive the gift, right? I think is a little bit what's being said here. So I wonder, what you think about that.
And this is where I feel like the big risk comes for us, right? In this subjectivity is here we are being asked to engage in this mitzvah, and kind of who are we to determine that, right? Because it's through our subjective lens in which we're perceiving someone else. And I think there's a piece of us that we have an opportunity here to let go of our perfectionism and to do our best. Because I think we can get hung up. I know I have in the past gotten hung up on, well, they're not exactly physically extending their hand to me, right? Or they're not using words to tell me what they need right now. So is there some type of boundary crossing where I'm going up and approaching them and saying, here, I'd like to give you this.
Mhm.
So I think that's the first thing. It's extremely challenging and fraught. But I guess what I'm feeling like is we shouldn't just sit, to not let that fear of making a mistake deter us from trying to engage with the mitzvah. Um, Josh, did you want to add anything? It's
Yeah, I
such
mean,
an
I think
important
I think
question.
yeah. I mean, there's some other questions that are coming up about like that are related to this, which is like I think we're very used to here in this environment spiritualizing material teachings, right? Historical or political or material things. We spiritualize them, right? Um, I think this is a case, Matanot Levinim, where we're really talking about Gashmias. We're really talking about the material. And there is a spiritual byproduct, but Purim is such an embodied holiday. It is about existential dread. It is about, putting on your clothes. It's about putting your body on the line as Queen Esther does. Um, and fasting, eating, it's very material. And in fact, the Megillah, of course, is the one book of the Bible where God's name isn't mentioned, right? There's something that's very this worldly about it. And so, as much as I think for sure there is a profound spiritual dimension to this, um, we shouldn't also lose sight of, fundamentally, we're talking about making sure that people have what to eat, literally, not spiritual food, like food, food to put in their stomach. That's really, really important. And so it doesn't, somebody asked, does it need to be money? Technically, no. I mean, it needs to be food. I mean, or it can be money that allows people to buy food. Um, so, and as opposed to mishloach manot, which does need to be food items that you don't give with money. You give that with food. But matanot levinim could be financial. It could be, in other ways. Um, but I think about, I would add two more things to this. Number one is I think for me, one of the most important teaching is Maimonides, the Rambam says, whatever you're spending on your Purim meal for yourself, you should be spending more on gifts to the poor. And number two is that he has this beautiful teaching at the end of the laws of Purim about how important Matanot Levinim is because he talks about when we engage with people who are on the margins and we really we help them to feel seen and valued and included, we actually bring the divine presence. He says it's actually bringing the Shekhinah into the world. It's bringing the divine presence in. And so, yeah, those are a number of responses to different questions that I see here.
Well,
Um,
and then I think this connection too with we're engaged in a tikkun to help address Amalek's preying on the weak, right? So what is it about this
mhm.
mitzvah that strengthens the weak, right? And so food, money to buy food, right? Basic like physical needs are I think at the height of that, right? That intent.
Hmm.
This is the other thing I think, and we could draw on so many different, and thank you, Josh, for bringing those amazing sources, so many different texts that we have about tzedakah in our tradition. And one of the principal ideas behind this is that we give people what they say they need. So we don't come into it as like, we think it'd be great for people to have socks. So we're going to give out socks. And the other person is saying, what I really need is money to pay for groceries, right? I don't need sock, right? So that I can determine what I can go into a store and get and me and take care of my own needs, which I know best. And so I think one of the important key things about giving money is it empowers the individual to provide what they might need versus our putting ourselves in kind of an asymmetrical position of we see something I think I know what you need. And so I'm going to give you that, right? And there's an inherent asymmetry in that. There's certainly inherent asymmetry in giving out money too, but there's also something empowering that that person can then make the decisions about what they need best when we don't know.
Yeah. Um, I'm looking catching up on the a lot of activity here. Um, I'm sure I've read in Judaism, Nancy says, I'm sure I've read in Judaism that helping a person materially benefits us spiritually. There's a Hasidic version of that. Your Gashmias is my Ruchnias. Your material well-being is my spiritual well-being, right? So taking care of someone physically, right, is that spiritual well-being. And uh yeah, and so I think absolutely like that's and it's important. It's also important, with Pesach now is 30 days away, or it is a month away. Having that in view of Passover is similar. Like, we have a tendency sometimes to spiritualize that teaching, so much about, our personal, spiritual, psychological, etc., Mitzrayim, our Egypt that we're leaving. And, it's this year, in every year, but this year in particular, we don't have to look too far to see the ways that people are still literally, physically, in forms of oppression and bondage. And so, just not overlooking that. I think Susan, that's what you were really inviting us to see. It's a form. It can become, if we're not careful, a form of like spiritual bypass, right? Where we're so into spiritualizing the teaching that's like we miss the, the plain meaning of the original, the foundational meaning. So they're all
Yeah.
tied up. Yeah.
I think Evan and Lynn raised this really important question about the transactional nature of these engagements, right? Um, I don't know who told me this simple story, but it's something that I really think about a lot when I think about this big question. And the story goes like this. Someone comes up to a door, knocks on the door, says, "Hi, I really need a blanket. I'm really cold." And the person at the door engages this person and gets to know them and says, "Wow, where are you from? How long have you needed a blanket?" All these things. And says at the end of the conversation, "I'm really sorry. I can't give you any blanket." Closes the door, right? Scenario
Mhm.
two, someone goes up to the door, knocks on the door, says, "Hi, I really need a blanket." And the person who answers the door says, "I'm really busy right now. I'm sorry I can't talk to you, but let me go run and get the blanket." Comes back, gives it to them, says, "Gegazon, go in good health," and closes the door. Which one has engaged in tzedakah? Is the kind of the question that our
Hmm.
tradition would ask, right? And so I think that, and especially in light of Shulchan Aruch's teaching, that we're not supposed to be in a discerning mode around this on Purim, according to the text, right? So it there's a part of us that wants to engage and know personally what's going on with this person so that we might best meet their needs. And there's also something in there that is telling us perhaps not right now. That's a little bit different, well, here. And so I know that may be a challenging story. I know it's challenging for me to
Hmm.
hear because I
Hmm.
want to be polite and kind in the face of other human beings. And I also realize that if I just give the blanket, I may have
Hmm.
ended up doing something even more important, but it may appear to be quite transactional and short.
Hold on one second. Um, just respond to one comment here.
Yeah, so
Um,
many great questions.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
there's a lot there. And it's interesting for me, Susan, like, I've also always been drawn to that teaching about, on Purim, we're not discriminating, about if somebody asks, you give, right? Which in general is something that I certainly I try to practice, regularly when I see people I'm in my car, I'm stop at the stoplight, somebody's coming up, I always try to, have something I can give. Um, and not only when my kids are in the car. Uh, and but on Purim, it's like there's well, and at all times when I'm Purim, there's something about the flow of just like of adopting a generous posture, right? There's something about that, being open and allowing that to flow. So, when I walked into shul last night, there was one of my friends selling raffle tickets, which I was like, okay, great, I'm gonna buy. And they had this thing where, you could buy it was increasing, but if you could put out your arms and you could for $20 or something, you could get as many as you could, spread your arms to. She's like, fine, great, you can have it. Thankfully I can afford, $20 for some raffle tickets. And it just felt nice. It felt nice to be able to do that. And that doesn't count, by the way, as my Matanoth. That's a whole other thing. Because that's very much transactional. But it was nice to be able to just feel open. And I think and it's hard. It is not at all simple. And, you know, my wife and I are career nonprofit professionals. Nobody's in this to get rich. And it's not like we're flush, but there's something that really, especially maybe with that, it's nice occasionally not occasionally, regularly to just find ways to feel that sense of flow to give where we can. It's part of
Yeah.
the day for me. Yeah.
Yeah, people are identifying ways in the chat to do that.
Right.
Um, and I think another thing we won't have time to unpack here today, but I want to lift up is what is the difference in our own experience, our own spiritual experience of giving to people face to face versus to organizations, or not versus to, but in addition to, I would say. And so people are lifting up the Maimonidean principle of giving anonymously, which is obviously a big principle in our tradition. But I also think that there's something substantially different in giving to a human being. And again, not in lieu of, but in addition to the support of fine nonprofits, many of whom are listed here. And that's a challenging topic for another day,
Mhm.
but it touches on this certainly in our midst of
Well, yeah, and I just want to add to that. Like, I think, last week I was at Trader Joe's. I'm sure half the people here shop at Trader Joe's. And and I had parked the parking lot at every Trader Joe's is a nightmare. I think that's like universal, right? So
yes.
and this one happened to have some good street parking right outside. So I parked on the street. And when I came out, when I came in, there's always a guy there who's asking for money. So when I came out, I said, "Hey, could you actually help me with my bags and putting them in my trunk?" Because they were right by where he was standing. Right. So I was going to give him money anyway, but I was like, okay, this is higher on the ladder. I get to give him actually some work. So he's a little more dignified in that. And, and just stopping to do that and stopping to get his name, right? His name was John. I was Josh, and like just have a conversation for 30 seconds for people who are ignored so often, even when I don't have money or it's Shabbat. I think it's so important. Um, it's something so simple to give is just an act of recognition. That really is, this teaching of the Rambam on Matanot Levyonim is you can just see, okay, you can feel like, oh, the Shekhinah is more here than the Shekhinah was 10 seconds ago. And so if that can be something, an outcome from today, yes, give to the food pantry. Don't give to IJS today. I'm going to get fired for that. But we do not qualify for this purpose. Tomorrow you can give to us. But today you should totally give to people, um, and and I think you're totally right, Susan. Like, to the extent we can and we feel safe and we're able to, and we're in a position to be able to help people feel seen today is really, really important. So.
Yeah. And you hear it so, may it be so, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you to Rachel and to Anmol, our latest addition to our crack ops team. Great to have her here. And to Susan, thank you. Thank you to everybody for being here. And we'll see you again tomorrow or whenever you can join us. And happy Purim, everybody.
Hugs.